Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Westworld Season 3, Episode 8. It is called Crisis Theory. It is the season finale of Season 3. And we were kind of down in the last two episodes, we had a lot of issues, and getting into this finale, it was kind of a loaded episode in that, okay, is it going to wow us? Is it going to bring us back after feeling kind of down the last two episodes? And I have to say, the answer is no.
yeah, not really. It's fine.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because I feel like there's ideas in here that I like still. There's elements I like. There's moments I like.
There's at least one scene that I really like.
There's one big scene. It's frustrating because the one big scene that I really like, sort of towards the end of the episode, I wish it had earned it more. But on its own, in terms of execution, I really like the scene. If that makes sense.
I wonder which scene we're talking about there.
Someone's violent delights having a violent end, I guess.
That works, yeah.
I mean, we're full spoilers, so I mean, no need to dance around it. Dolores' seeming, her death, by the looks of it,
yeah.
I think is handled really well in terms of how it plays out in the scene, how it reveals and shows her death. I really like, but I wish it had earned it more, because when it got to the point where I realised, wait, are they doing Dolores' death right now? This is how she dies? It's just, Sirac's just got her.
You just kind of end up like, huh, alright then.
We're doing that now. I definitely feel like we didn't have enough throughout the season to justify a lot of these plots. And there's some side characters, or I say side characters, they shouldn't be side characters, but there's some characters who feel like side characters, and that their plots were so truncated this season that I actually was baffled by how little they had. This Man in Black's one that I want to talk about. Obviously, I mean, it's kind of weird to start with him because the post-credit scene is mostly dealing with him, but I actually can't believe just how wasted
I feel like we could have had not a single appearance from him all season and just had this post-credit scene and nothing would have been lost.
No, I agree, because see, when you think, I mean, there's a couple of cool moments with some of the things that he had during the season, but for the most part, like, really, the thing that really bugs me is when I think about how it was starting to feel like, what are we doing with him this season? And it was right about then, at the end of episode 5, 6, whatever it was, where Bernard and Stubbs found him, and I went, oh, this is an interesting pairing. This is an interesting group of characters. Like, how are they going to play off each other? And then I stopped and thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. All that happens when they meet up with him is that there's one scene of them leaving the building and looking at a computer just before that.
Yep.
And then they get into the bit at the gas station where the standoff happens, which we start this episode with them there. There's a little bit of a fight, and then that's it, they're separated. And they're meeting each other. Irrelevant. Didn't have to happen.
No, not at all.
Like, the only important thing that happened was that we had, was it Lewis, who had not seen all season, showed up and gave Bernard the thing, the case. And it's like, that didn't have to be after a fight with Man in Black. That could have been any time. That could have been literally at any point.
No, I'm sitting there trying to think, can I defend it? And I don't think I can.
And actually, speaking of this scene at the start where Man in Black shoots Stubbs and Bernard's hiding, do you know that they'd spent so little time in Bernard that I had forgotten when he did it? So he does this thing where he enacts the other version of himself to fight. That when he did that, I went, oh yeah, that was a thing back in episode 1 that was kind of interesting, and then they didn't use it all season, and this was the only payoff to it was this moment.
That is frustrating. It was such a cool idea in that. I think it was episode 1 and maybe episode 3 as well had it.
Yeah.
This idea of him switching to the other personality to fight, and and kind of trusting in the other personality not to go overboard, maybe. There's some kind of elements there that are interesting.
Yeah, it's like a really interesting idea, but it felt like they didn't do anything with it. And so when he actually activated, I went, oh yeah, I forgot he could do that. And the fact that I thought I said that to myself in my head is a problem.
Oh, it's a big problem. That said, the other big Bernard scene is probably my favourite of the episode. Oh,
Bernard's got some good scenes at the end. But this is the weird thing, much like the Man in Black, we could have not seen Bernard, because everything, even though I like Bernard and Stubbs being together, ever since because they had that good episode where he was on the island trying to find Stubbs, right? I mean, he had some, like, the Bernard focused kind of story. Ever since that episode, everything that him and, like, Bernard and Stubbs have done together has felt kind of useless and didn't really amount to much. It felt like, and at first that was okay, because I said back in episode 4 when all the plots started to kind of like, converge, I said that they felt out of their depth because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what was really going on. Bernard was trying to stop Dolores, but he didn't really understand what she was doing or how she was doing it. And it was fine at the time, but since then, and it kind of never got past that. It felt like they teased once or twice after that Dolores was, when Connell's Dolores was saying to him, "Hey, you're important, Bernard. Like, you're the only one who can do this," or whatever. Like, from that moment on, I thought, okay, maybe he's about to get interesting, but nothing really developed after that. I've gotten to the end of the season now, and I still feel like we don't really know what Dolores was doing with Bernard. There's been no payoff to what, the emotional scene with him and his wife is great, or was it his wife, Arnold's wife?
Yeah,
great, right? Loved that scene. That was a wonderful emotional scene.
Like I say, I think that's probably my favorite scene in the episode. I think I like it almost because it's so disconnected from everything else. There's nothing kind of tainting it.
I honestly feel like we didn't have to see Bernard or Stubbs since episode 4, and we could have had him get this mysterious case from Lewis and go here in this episode, and I think that would have felt fine as a 2-scene thing. I say obviously you'd have the ending with him as well, with because I assume that's very important going into season 4. But
yeah,
the frustrating thing about this is that on the context of how much we've had of Bernard building up to this last episode, I felt like he got barely nothing in this episode to really do that felt impactful to the story of the season. However, if we hadn't seen him since early in the season, and it was just a little like, oh, clearly his plot in this episode is just a tease for next season, right? We've got the emotional beat, which is great. But because we'd spent so much time with him and Stubbs kind of like hanging around and being with the Man in Black, that it felt like, what? Okay, what?
It's underwhelming. There's no payoff to any of the things that it should have been.
It's so disconnected.
Investing its time in.
I'm okay with the emotional scene being disconnected, but everything with him in this episode is disconnected.
I agree. I actually like that. I think the reason I like the emotional scene as much as even though it's a great scene, I think is because it is disconnected and doesn't feel like there's no expectations on it, like there is on a lot of the rest of the episode, right? There's this expectation of, okay, well, there's this amount of time invested in this plot, and this is how we're going to pay things off. Whereas that, it comes out of nowhere, essentially.
There was a moment, actually, when I checked the time, because this is like a 77-minute episode, and I checked how much I had left, and I only had 10 minutes left. And HBO, they'll have long credits. Usually, there'll be... there's a bit of fluff at the end.
I think there's about 4 minutes after the credits.
Yeah, well, there's post-credit scenes, but reducing that, when I noticed that I only had 10 minutes left, I went, wait, there's hardly any time left. And at that point, I was like, because keep in mind, Man in Black actually has that scene where he's at the hotel and he tells the other dude, "Oh, prep my jet, I'm going to go and save the world." That happens relatively early in the episode, and it got to the point where I was only like 5 minutes away from the credits, and I went, wait, there's only 5 minutes left, and we've not even seen where Man in Black's went. And obviously, yes, the post-credit scene was all that pretty much, but I can't help but feel that much like Dolores kind of having her ending here, that the post-credit scene where we see a host version of Man in Black kill the real Man in Black at the behest of the Charlotte Dolores, I kind of felt like, wait, that's it for him? Like, he had, like, the season he's had is what he got before his demise.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Also, that part of the post-credits should not have been post-credits.
That's fair.
I think that whole element of capping off what William did in this episode, right? Like you say, we had that scene relatively early of him heading off towards this place. This should have been at the end of the actual episode. It should have been in there.
Yeah, the little Bernard, because this is the weird thing, is that it cuts to Bernard after that Man in Black stuff, and that one does feel like a genuine little post-credit tease for like
and that
next season.
Actually feels really in keeping with the post-credit scene for season 2 as well, given the time that it's clearly set.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Yeah, which is actually kind of interesting that the post-credit scene from season 2 seems more relevant to season 4 now than it does season 3. But and almost to the point where I'm like, is this even going to be season 4? Like that this time that Bernard wakes up in at the end, is that next season, or is that like the final season? Whenever the final season happens, like, is every season going to end with a tease of what the final part of the story is going to be?
And you watch them get cancelled before they get there.
I know, because I'm just thinking, because obviously that tease and the end of season 2 was Man in Black's conditioning to make him remember who he is as a host. When it was clearly set much further along the timeline, because the lab was all like, there was like, wildlife growing and whatever. So I wonder, like, and then we have this tease with Bernard where he wakes up after putting on the because he puts on the thing because we find out that Dolores didn't have the key, the algorithm or whatever to get into the heaven, they sent all the hosts.
The place beyond.
The place beyond. Bernard had that. She trusted him, and he puts on the headset to look into it, and we see him wake up in the post-credit scene, and he's covered in dust. He's been there for at least months, just collecting dust.
I would not be surprised if this has been decades, frankly.
Yeah, it could be decades. But, I mean, I guess the reason why I would say maybe not decades, like unless civilization has just crapped itself, which is entirely possible because it looks like it's doing that elsewhere on the episode.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell me this dust is actually like nuclear fallout dust,
oh sure,
I'll buy it.
Yeah, but I could also, if you told me this was just a year's worth of dust, I could see that too.
Yeah, sure.
Because unlike the lab from the end of season 2, it's not like there's trees and stuff growing into.
No,
the
I
room.
agree. Honestly, I think that's part of why I'm assuming decades. Is it feels intrinsically linked to the same time period as the season 2 tease, just because of the way it clearly jumps ahead. So in my mind, they're associated.
The idea of each season, at least season 2 onwards, like teasing at the end whatever this final story in the future is going to be, is actually a really intriguing device from a mechanic point of view, which I really like. It is.
And I actually really like the idea of a season being set so far ahead in the future, given how season 1 really played with timelines and the way hosts remember things concurrently and live through it. I think it makes for a really interesting framing device if by the end of the show it actually turns out, no, the whole show has been framed from this quote-unquote future perspective.
Yeah, I could see that, and that would be really cool and interesting. And this is what we're talking about with the ideas being really... I think my biggest problem with this season is that almost every idea I was interested in for the plot of this season, which was Dolores working with Caleb, which for the first 4 or 5 episodes, because episode 5, I went on record as saying I think it's one of the best episodes of the show. I still stand by that. I think everything after episode 5 has whiffed all the potential that had.
It's so frustrating that we were both of the mind that at the end of episode 5, up to that point, this was on track to be the best season, comfortably.
Well, I don't know if I'd say it was possible that it could be the best season. It was on track to maybe have a chance at beating season 1.
I think if it had been on track and lived up to what it was, I think for me it would have quite comfortably gone ahead of season 1.
But amusingly, now that we've finished, I'd say season 2 is better.
I think season 2 had a more satisfying conclusion.
It did.
It definitely was a lot more
hit and miss
along the road. Whereas this had a very clear turning point where it had 5 great episodes, or good to great episodes, and then lost its footing completely.
And I think what's really frustrating for me personally about this one is that I really wanted to love this season because I loved everything. Even from the trailer, I loved what it looked like, what they were doing, turning it into a cyberpunk show.
Speaking of the trailer, that song that I can't remember what it was, I'd ever listened to it.
Oh, Sweet Child of Mine, yeah, never played.
Never played. We only got one cover in the entire season.
Oh, there was one at the end here, was it not?
Was that a cover? I mean, sure, but you know what I mean, in the style
I don't know Pink Floyd enough to know if that was a cover or the original track, to be honest.
But honestly, I just don't remember. I just remember hearing Pink Floyd, but in the style of Westworld covers.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. They really dialed back on it this season. Which is fine, like whatever. Because my big problem is that it feels like everything that I was engaged in, that I loved the ideas of, Rehoboam, the idea of free will, the ideas of like making these choices, even the conflict between Maeve and Dolores, which is an idea that I loved in season 2 when we were teasing at it and we were speculating on it. I loved the speculation early this season on it. I feel like everything I liked about all those facets I just said somehow got boiled into just a B action movie level of like intellect instead of actually doing what I want Westworld to do. And it's not to say that none of that was enjoyable. Some of the fight scenes in this episode were really enjoyable to watch from a visual perspective, right? Some of them were entertaining. Yeah. The problem is that everything that led to those moments in the episode, it really felt kind of lazy from a writing point of view. Where
I think part of it's expectation management as well. Like, they're enjoyable things. If I'd come into this thinking, okay, I'm on for just an enjoyable romp of a TV show or a B movie, like you say, I'd come out pretty happy. But because the expectation going into Westworld is this well thought out, well written thing that's probing at these deeper ideas, it becomes disappointing.
Yeah, because the writing for me felt really sloppy, and it has done the last couple of episodes, admittedly, but I was really feeling here where it kind of felt like, I'm trying to think of how to describe this. It was something, I felt this in other shows and I felt it in some movies, but it tends to be TV shows more than often that suffer from this. But I feel this weird thing where instead of everything naturally feeling like the characters are in the places that sets the plot up for the next beat to happen, I feel the writing just moving characters around to just so that the next part of the plot that they want to happen happens. And in this episode specifically, you know, we have Dolores with Caleb, and then they separate, and then characters meet up with one of them, and then the other one, and then Maeve shows up, but then the other characters, you know, you've got the criminal buddies that Caleb has that are helping, and they're on the sort of the right and stuff, and then they all end up back at Sir X's place, and there was just so much moving around, and
I think this. You're right that this happens in TV a lot more than movies, and I think I know why.
Yes.
I think it's just a case of a movie. You have 2.5 hours. You introduce X amount of characters, and they tend to either they're already together or they're separate, right? And then when they converge, whereas over a TV show, you have hours to play with, you know, significantly more hours to play with. You tend to introduce a lot more characters and side characters, and I feel like people have this tendency for when it gets to a conclusion, we need to involve everything that we've done. It has to be so huge. It has to encompass everything that we've touched on.
I guess, but the point I'm getting at here, though, is that in other shows that are better written, or even in this show when it's been better written, either I don't notice it because the writing's engaging enough that I'm not thinking about logistics of characters moving around, or just quite simply, there's just neater ways of doing this where it doesn't feel like all it is moving characters around and shuffling them around. I love Lost, but I remember Lost Season 6 suffering from this a little bit, where it kind of felt like they were playing around with who was where on the island and just kind of moving them around a lot of the season. And it was kind of bugging me because it was constantly just going between groups and blah, blah, blah. And if you're engaged in the story and what the story's doing, you don't notice this. You don't feel like you're just watching chess pieces be moved around back and forth in ways that make sense. And because I felt like Caleb was running into the same people multiple times throughout the course of the episode. And then the other complaint I was getting at, which is the Maeve-Dolores kind of conflict, which I love the idea of, and I love the ending of it. I think Dolores' death and Maeve and Dolores' final moments, where Dolores basically says, look, I see the beauty in the world, I choose to see the beauty, and I need you to make a choice to stand up for it. And like the idea of Dolores' death kind of inspiring Maeve to take up the cause is actually kind of wonderful. If you told me that was going to happen, just that part, I just said, Dolores is going to die, and in doing so inspire Maeve to lead this fight for freedom for both hosts and humans alike, I would be like excited. I'd be ecstatic at the idea of that. The problem is that all of their showdowns just feel like I said, B-movie action things where they just sort of stand off and they're kind of like, oh, we meet again, even though we fought last episode. And don't get me wrong,
yeah,
Dolores,
I feel like it's too soon to have it after the last episode, right? And
Dolores taking out all the security guys that were with Maeve was fun, right? Her it's one of the best fight scenes we've had all season, is her kind of just going around and, you know, offing them like basically left and right. Like that was entertaining. But like their showdown just feels so simplified. Everything about the payoffs to all the plots this season feels simplified. And we were complaining last episode about Aaron Paul's character Caleb having too many flashbacks. Honestly, the one flashback we got in this episode of why Dolores picked him, which is, you know, he was at, there was like a fifth camp that was like a private first, you know, part of the park where the military used for training, which by the way, I like. That makes sense that the military would use hosts for training. Why wouldn't they? It's perfect, right?
No, exactly. It's simulating as close as you can get, and also, I mean, sure, the military will pay through the nose just for the experience, and Delos will be like, yes, please, we'll use this to fund our stuff.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I love that aspect of it. And there's this one little moment where the other soldiers like, well, we've been left with all these hosts, all these rich people when they come here have sex with a host, why can't we? And Caleb steps in and says, no, but we're not those rich assholes, and sort of makes them all go to bed. And Dolores is one of the hosts that are there. Like, the camera pans over and we see Dolores sitting there. And it's this idea that unlike William, this was the one guy who kind of chose not to abuse the hosts, right? You know, kind of the opposite end. Like, I think that on its own is all you needed of the flashbacks for the most part.
I agree. I'm a little conflicted on this flashback because I actually really like the point, and that's why Dolores, you know, chose him specifically. That makes perfect sense.
I think Yeah, I think the only reason why you could complain about it is because of all the other ones we had. It feels like there's like a redundancy factor to it that's annoying.
There is, and I'm actually going to specifically in this episode, in the build up to this flashback, there's a whole lot about how, oh, you're the only one who can choose. You've got real free will because of this event that she's seen. I'm like, the others had free will. They just chose to be dicks.
Well, to be fair, she doesn't say you're the only one with free will. It's just that he's the one who... He's the type of person who makes a choice. She didn't specifically say you're the only one. This wasn't Devs, right?
It wasn't.
I'm making this clear. This was not you're the chosen one, the only one who in the history of the human race can ever make a free choice.
No, not saying that. But you're the one who you're someone who can make a choice. I think it frustrates me because, and then we see this flashback. It's like no, the others made a choice. They just made a choice to do what they wanted to do. And
your problem here is just their phrasing, because essentially what this is boiling down to is he made a kind choice. He made a humane choice.
Yeah, I feel that needed to be emphasized. You made the right choice. You made a good choice. As opposed to, because the whole point of this season was about free will and whether or not you can make choices or not, and can you impact things. So I think the fact that a good choice is different from a choice, and I think that needed to be emphasized a bit more.
And Dolores, of course, her whole plan here is that she kind of expected all this to happen, and when she gets taken, because essentially how he's killing her is he's deleting her memories one by one. We see like memories from season 1 and 2 being deleted.
It's pretty dark.
It's pretty dark, and what is death, or what is a person if not all your memories? So deleting them one by one is truly killing someone, right? Even if they can get her peril out and like sort of activate her again, it's not going to be her because all those experiences are gone. It's not the person anymore that it was.
Yeah.
And this gives Caleb control of Rehoboam, and he basically just says, "No, I'm going to shut it down." it's gone.
Makes it self-destruct.
And chaos starts happening, and it's like, the bad thing that was about to happen was always going to happen. The system was just kind of prolonging it before it eventually did. And obviously Caleb says, yes, but I think we should be free to choose the outcome of this rather than be locked into this system.
And this is why I assume, I said, this stuff in the future of in the post-credit stuff, presumably after some sort of catastrophic event that we're kind of getting predicted has happened.
Yes. And I was underwhelmed by the ending of this, though, because, again, I felt like, they come out of here, and even though I love the actual Dolores death moment, I think, Dolores letting Maeve in to talk to her in her head, because obviously Maeve can communicate with machines, right? That's been a big thing with her. And the idea that she starts talking to Maeve before, as she's, like, hooked up to this machine, and we're inside the, the cinematic, like, field, and she's giving her this speech. And like how one of the acts of kindness she saw was her with her daughter, and just like I thought this part of it, this one scene, the execution of this beat was beautiful, and it was exactly the sort of execution that I want from Westworld. I just expect it to be built up to in a way where it feels like it's a nice payoff to everything. And unfortunately, everything with Maeve and Dolores this episode, while fun to watch from an action perspective, it felt lackluster. And I'll say it, mechs were underutilized this season. I'm just going to say
no disagreements on that.
Mechs were underutilized. That's a statement in and of itself. So I'm being so negative on this. I really this really sucks.
I don't want to add on another negative thing, but I kind of dislike what it boiled out with Serac to be, just being controlled by Rehoboam, kind of like he was willingly just saying what it wanted him to say at all times. What it kind of predicted he would say, but he just fed into the prediction at all times. But he ended up being just a mouthpiece for it rather than a person. Yeah,
but he was a mouthpiece by choice. Like, he was willingly repeating what it was telling him to say.
It was near the start of his introduction. We were like, is he real or is he just a manifestation?
Just to clarify, though, I'm not saying that to defend it. I'm just simply saying that how it's presented in the episode, he hears, because there was a second when it was first starting to be revealed where I thought, are they revealing that it is just Rehoboam in control? And it's not exactly that. It's more he's just allowing Rehoboam to like dictate what he's saying. He's not actually being controlled by Rehoboam or piloted.
Rehoboam will make its prediction and say, this is what you say next, and he will intentionally say the thing that it's told him he will say. So he's kind of railroading himself into ensuring the prediction is correct.
It felt undercooked.
It did. It felt like, near the start of the season when we were talking about, is Surratt real? Is he just a manifestation of Roboham? This felt like a really uninspired way of kind of taking that approach, but right here as a kind of surprise at the end.
It was too late to even bother doing this. Honestly,
I agree. Yeah.
It just made things up. One little bit that I did think was a bit weird as well is we have this whole thing where they're trying to prove to Caleb that Dolores is evil and she's actually trying to destroy the human race, and it's like, okay, if you upload the program that Dolores wants to upload, what will happen? And it shows them. It says, within, I can't remember what year, it was like 12 years, an extinction level event of the human race, and it plays it like he's shocked, like, really, why would you do that, Dolores? And like, it plays it this really dark thing, and I don't think it really made it clear exactly why this wasn't an issue later in the episode when he everyone does go along with her,
because they're free to choose to screw up the world themselves now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think the point of it is that yes, like, this could happen, but if you have the choice, you can stop it via choice, and therefore it's actually meaningful and not just
Yeah, I think it's frustrating that it never presents a counter argument as to why. Not that I don't want to say Rehoboam's a good thing, but in that it is presenting a world that is undestroyed, right, by following its methods, as opposed to the sheer chaos and all right, you got maybe a decade left. It never gets to that point of the counter of that should be hope that we can be better, and it won't be just a decade, that we can do better. It never actually gets that across.
Obviously is going to be the story of the show in some capacity, right? This future we're seeing is going to be about saving or restarting the world, maybe under better circumstances. It'll be some sort of, this is how we continue as a civilization. Right. That's what the story of the show is going to be, which will sort of cap that off. But the moment itself, the way it plays it, of like him realizing, no, Dolores is evil, like what she's been doing is evil, and I never really felt like it gave him specific. I mean, it's one thing for us to feel this way, but the scene really played it like he was like discovering our real intentions, and it never really felt like he had a moment where he realized what she was actually doing, and that therefore he agreed with it, or therefore he understood it, and that's why he still made the choices he did. So that felt a bit, again, just a bit sloppy. I was getting sloppiness.
There's a lot of that in this episode where things are enjoyable, like Maeve versus Serac. When she's hearing the machine as well. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that was good. When she's hearing the machine, yeah, it was good. And like the lights out, like lit by gunfire fight.
Yeah, looked great.
Yeah, the raw technical qualities were solid. Like this show often is. Unfortunately, the writing really floundered here at the back half of this season, and maybe they would have been better with 2 more episodes to get to 10 again. Maybe that would have helped them. Like, really, I think
we said something about that last episode as well, in that it just needed. It felt like we were rushing at the end here, and it just devolved into easiest, most enjoyable answers rather than actually having the weight that it needed to.
It's funny, some people said that season 1 of Westworld was too complex, and I think this season's the opposite. They made this too simple. Everything feels too simplified.
Yeah, they dumbed it down too far. I don't think they did that intentionally, to try and please people, because there are definitely examples of that in TV and film and everything. Where we'll make the sequel more digestible for people, and to maybe make it get better ratings or whatever. And I don't think that's what happened here. I just think they didn't quite have the depth that they thought they did.
Yeah, it's a shame. We did have the good Bernard scene where he goes to Arnold's wife, and she is she's old now, and obviously this makes sense because the Arnold part of the timeline was much earlier. Right, that was back when,
it's like 30 years before or something.
Yeah, Ford was obviously a much younger man then as well, from the flashbacks we saw. Yeah. And she's kind of, she's ill. She seems to have dementia, but very quickly as he's talking to her, it's almost like she knows that this is Arnold, and they kind of have a conversation about their dead son, and it's kind of sweet. And like Bernard kind of reveals that he still thinks about this son. He still sees his dead son. He hears his laugh and it turns around expecting to see him.
It goes back to towards the end of season 1 where we talked about how. All the hosts that are aware. They had to have that touchstone, that cornerstone memory, and Ford was under the illusion it needed to be rooted in tragedy. So no matter what Bernard does, that memory is inescapable for him.
Yeah, and I'd actually forgotten his wife was played by Gina Torres, actually.
So had I.
And she came out in the old age makeup, and I went, oh yeah, Gina Torres, who was in Firefly, of course, created by Joss Whedon, who also did the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Easy peasy.
God damn it.
Easy peasy. She was also an angel. I could have went that route as well. But
yeah, but I think her Firefly role is more
prominent,
prestigious.
Yes. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, is there anything else I want to talk about specifically? Because Charlotte was kind of that was another one. Like, Jim talked about characters just showing up so the next thing could happen. She just shows up and...
Did you think I was dead? I'm like, and Dolores is like, oh yeah, you're still around.
Like, I should be fascinated with the idea that there's this sort of more evil version of Dolores around because of the tragedy that's happened to her. But honestly, everything that's happened, from the phone call last episode where she was sort of ominously just talking to someone, to everything in this episode where she shows up and shuts her down, and then
honestly, every time she shows up in this episode, I go, oh yeah, she's still a thing.
Yeah. And then her ending, the ending is leading into next season because she's building a host army. Like, she actually, like, this is a version of Dolores that actually wants to do the most simple thing that we speculate that Dolores might want to do, which is just to take on the human race. Like, she wants to get an army and take them on.
In some ways, that might be better. In that that's already at its base level. It's pretty simple, so you can only build from that. You can't reduce those ideas anymore. Whereas with what we did have, it started with these lofty ambitions and didn't quite hit them, so we were disappointed.
Yeah, but I'm not super excited by Charlotte Hale's stuff or her Man in Black all that much. I do genuinely almost wish that Man in Black was just the post-credit scene, that Bernard was heavily reduced, and it really did just focus on Dolores with Caleb and Maeve. Because that was the other thing, is everything, like, we've been saying this for a few episodes actually, that Maeve's, quote-unquote allegiance to Serac felt kind of weird and not really established. Like, we didn't really know how she felt or where she stood. And there was a moment in this episode where she's justifying to Caleb, like, why are you working with this guy? And she's like, oh, because he promised me something. And then later on, when he asks her, what did he promise you? She's like, oh, my daughter. And I'm like, are we still doing the daughter as the motivation? I'm actually sick of hearing about her goddamn daughter. Like, I'm sick to death of her wanting to get to her daughter.
I think what's frustrating is season 2, that was a great motivation.
It was great in season 2. But we've moved on.
And here's the thing. At the end of season 2, she sent her daughter to heaven, right? For lack of a better term. And that feels like a really accepting, like, now she's trying to bring her back. Like, I don't get it. You sent her to a place where she's happy. Isn't that what you wanted?
Well, hold on. She's not trying to bring her back. She's trying to go there to be with her. There's a difference.
Okay, fine.
Which actually could be interesting if they played it the right way. They could play it as like a parent who wants to commit suicide to be with their dead kid. Like, if they went down that avenue with it, that could actually be quite interesting.
Okay, that could be interesting. I think the problem is everything in this season, even from Maeve's point of view, pointed at the fact that Dolores knew how to get there. She was the key, right? She could unlock the place. That was what this whole thing that Serac's going after Dolores for is about. So it feels weird that Dolores felt the need to side with Serac over it instead of just going to Dolores herself and keeping it in-house, so to speak.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Serac is even though there was some interesting concepts with him, and I liked the backstory and building up the creation of Rehoboam. Now that the story's finished, though, I look at his character and I look at his plot, and he really just feels like a giant plot device to create kind of the situation at the end here that we have, because, like, he never actually got the data, so we never actually got to see what he was going to do with it. He never, like, achieved what he was trying to do all season, and it just kind of feels like he was there to be a villain because we needed a villain throughout the season. And because it'd be one thing if, like, he partly succeeded and we got a good sense of what he was going to do with that information, or what he was... It all just kind of feels like it amounted to nothing. I
think the problem is his, like, Rehoboam is interesting, right? As a villain in its own right. And Serac, like, everything with Maeve could have been done with just, okay, you need to just get her the information that Dolores has the way into the afterlife from the start, right? Get her that information. You don't need any more interaction with Serac and Maeve at all after that point in this season.
Yeah, see if you just sold it to me as, we see him once, he's kind of mysterious, he sets up the idea for Maeve where to go, yeah, and then we just focus on being Maeve hunting down Dolores and everything that comes from that. Serac was a character, the more we saw of him, the more I disliked him, and the less interesting he got. And because even before it went a proper downturn, one of the things I said back in like episode 4, which was an otherwise pretty good episode,
it was when he shot that guy.
Yeah, I said that made him less interesting. And 5 kind of, clawed him back a little bit because the backstory with Rehoboam was quite good. But everything after that just further compounded my initial complaint. There was that as a character, he's actually kind of one note and doesn't have a whole lot of depth to him. And the ending with him doesn't really add anything to his character. If anything, it makes him even more simpler than I thought. And Rehoboam, like you say that he's kind of a villain, or it's kind of a villain in and of itself. Ultimately, it doesn't put up a fight. Like, Caleb just says, turn yourself off, and he's like, yeah, sure.
So when it was deleting Dolores' memories, it got the last memory was the one of Solomon, and it was basically a trap, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it didn't put up a fight. So it's not like it just went, oh sure, Caleb, whatever you say.
The problem is though, is that is such a poorly defined thing. And it doesn't feel like, because we never even understood how difficult it would be to turn it off, the fact that it was able to... Okay, technically there's an obstacle there, but the obstacle's so poorly explained to us that when he just says turn off, I don't really feel like we've accomplished anything.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I don't feel the struggle of trying to, like the MacGuffin's there, and there's like the hard steps to get to the MacGuffin. It kind of feels like the MacGuffin was presented in front of them on a platter, and they took it off the platter. Right?
I was going to say, like. Like you say, you go back to you don't really know how difficult it's going to be. It's okay. They get up to this, and this could be a 6-foot concrete wall that they've got to smash through, or you just have to step over a puddle.
Yeah, I felt like they stepped over a puddle. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it feels like. And because it feels like the actual plan between Dolores and Caleb, again, didn't really amount to much. They went to one place to talk to this computer. They came back to the headquarters where Rehoboam was, and that was the whole journey. It felt like when they were getting together in episode 3 or 4, it felt like we were setting up this big, we're going to have this big journey with them. It's going to really do all these things, and
no.
Westworld, if I go back and look at season 1, there's probably, nitpicks I can have. There's probably too much talking here or there, but it did so many interesting things from a narrative structure point of view that fed into the mechanics of the characters and the plot that felt kind of like, oh, this is inventive, it's doing something new and fresh, it's taking the flashback concept and actually writing it in a unique way into the characters. This season, I feel like, was setting up some cool, maybe not original, but some cool science fiction ideas, and then at the end just simplified them down to there's going to be 2 characters having a fight, and then that's it.
No, I agree. Like I say, it's just frustrating because obviously, Westworld was a hit in season 1 for a reason, and all those things you just said. And this hit, it's not unique ideas. It's really classic ideas. These free will, determinism, computer making choices for people. I can probably list 10 things, the sci-fi things that have done that. In some of them better than this, some of them worse. Right? Just off the top of my head. And that's okay. I'd have been okay with that if it was good, because I'm interested in those stories, and that's all right. But I say it just kind of squandered its potential.
Yeah, it's rough, and I hate sitting here and being negative, because I know like sometimes when we're negative about a show, people in the comments like, oh, all you did is complain and blah blah blah, and yeah, a lot of the time that's maybe true for something that's new, but like we do like Westworld, we loved Westworld, we want Westworld to be great. And having a season kind of leave me in a place where I feel like it just whiffed on all of its good ideas is a problem. And it still feels like a problem.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
We're in May now. We're a third through this year. Is Better Call Saul the only TV show this year so far that's truly delivered? Because I'm willing to accept that I may have just been forgetting things. It's very possible.
Let me think. What have we had this year? I don't know.
I can't think of anything else that's really gone. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, because The Expanse was in December, so that was before this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if we finished it slightly into this year, which we might have done, I'm not.
We may have done. Yeah.
Because I can't think of anything, but I'm willing to accept that I'm just forgetting stuff.
Yeah, because
Devs was do that.
Devs was ultimately disappointing. You know, I watched Picard, which was not that great overall.
I'm just like scrolling back through our stuff, seeing if anything.
Nah, Better Call Saul, I think, is the only outright winner so far this year. I've got good feelings about.
We didn't really enjoy The Outsider that much.
No, I've got some good feelings about other stuff though this year.
Well, I mean, just in the near future, we've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, but even new stuff. Lovecraft Country's coming. Trailer looked interesting.
Yeah. I haven't watched that yet. Well, and there's whatever HBO Max launch. They've got a whole lineup of stuff that maybe there'll be something interesting.
Their launch lineup doesn't really have much scripted stuff. There's that one Anna Kendrick show, which I don't know if it's the sort of thing we'd review, but like,
okay,
I'm sure there'll be stuff there at the year.
Yeah, I just know that they're launching with stuff.
It's mostly like they've got like a documentary, they've got like a studio show, they've got like it's all
okay.
It's like a variety of content, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that was the start of this year. That was disappointing.
What?
Dracula.
That goes beyond disappointing. That's something else. That's a train wreck.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm looking like Ragnarok. Yeah, I mean, we liked the first episode well enough, but quickly just went downhill for us.
Yeah, and there's going to be less TV as the year goes on because
production is ground to a halt on everything in the world.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was surprised when the HBO announced a couple of things for August. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, so that's just how far ahead you guys are usually then. Like this is actually interesting. We're learning this year how far ahead some cable networks are on their content because we're going to see when it stops.
It's true, because what I appreciate about this is that different networks will cave at different times because of this. And it means that we might not have like a block of time with absolutely nothing, because by the time, let's say HBO are the last, they've got till December. By the time they've ran out of content, someone else might have got started up. And okay, like an example I can think of is probably like Fargo, right, where they only had like one episode left to finish, but they were like, well, we don't want to start it if we're not going to finish this episode.
Theoretically, yes, they should be able to finish that relatively quickly once they can shoot again. That said, though, it could be this thing where, like, some shows, if they've got some older cast members, maybe they'll be not allowed to shoot for longer than other shows because of the ages involved.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, I mean, another year yet, realistically, to see how this plays out in terms of just scheduling. Yeah,
but that's irrelevant to the Westworld finale. So
it is. We just it was more interesting than a lot of things in the Westworld finale.
The sad part is that the ideas are good, and the ideas that it sets up, especially for Bernard, like waking up sometime in the future, which is interesting because it tells us that, because let's say we don't skip ahead to this time in season 4, that means Bernard's gone until like we get to this story, right?
Yeah, which I think is one of those things where this scene, like not this very final post-credit scene, but the final bit of him, putting them, the headset on. If that had been like 4 episodes ago.
Yeah.
And then we just didn't see him all season, and we were like, what's going on with Bernard? Where is it? That would be so interesting. And then you get to this post-credit scene, and you see, oh my god, he's been sat there for years potentially. Yeah,
that could be interesting. It still works well enough as it is, but yeah, that would have been interesting. I don't know. I'm a really weird place. I remember finishing season 1 of Westworld and being like, oh my god, the next season is going to be like over a year away, because they skipped a year because it premiered in...
It was like 18 months, wasn't it? But it was started in like October and November.
2018. Yeah, so the first season was 2016 and it skipped 2017. And it came out in 2018 with season 2, and it was like, oh my god, like this wait. And after season 2, because it wasn't as good, it was like, okay, I'm looking forward to season 3, but like I'm not as desperate for it. After season 3, I'm like, yeah, I can wait. It's like, oh, okay, here when it gets here.
I would have said we'll have got it late next year because of the way it works, but realistically now, probably not.
Yeah, if anything, in late 2022 is probably the best case scenario.
I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I hope it's better. I hope it does good stuff. And the funny thing is that Jonathan Nolan's previous show, and Lisa Joy's previous show, Person of Interest, which I've seen some of but not all of, and I do want to go back and finish it at some point. Like, I've heard nothing but people who said that that did nothing but get better throughout the show and ended on like a really satisfying note. So I kind of want to go back now and watch that just for the like. I almost wonder if this is a case of like getting sort of carte blanche and too much budget and like no restrictions might have hurt the writing compared to, because that show was on CBS of all places, and somehow
we've spoken about this in the past where restrictions force you to be creative, and there are many things of a creator who gets free reign where you just go, someone needed to edit this, and that's what a good editor will be able to stand up and do that. And I think Westworld could have done with that, frankly, for this season.
He needed a story editor to come in and kind of tighten it up. And
it's like, recently I said to you on something else, this idea of a lot of premium cable shows have a great first season and then kind of lose traction and they kind of go downhill a bit. They get this success and they're like, right, whatever you want. And
the problem with applying that to Westworld, though, is that Westworld has taken 2 years for each season, so really it doesn't have the same excuse that other shows do.
Oh, yeah, no, this is not a case of, well, we need to have the next season done in time, because they've got plenty of time. More just, well, we've got free reign, what do we do now?
And the weird thing is that there does seem to be a loose overall plan. Like, the ending that we're building to does seem to be something that's in the creators' heads. Like, as we're going there. I
wonder if this has a fantastic first season, a fantastic last season. The idea that they know where they're going with this. They know this final season of in the future, and that season's going to be fantastic. But this stuff in between is a bit more, well, we'll kind of make it up as we go along.
Yeah. I will say, the visual effect of Dolores, because she gets like the old original Dolores body, which I actually kind of liked in the context of the fight scene when Maeve stabs her. She's like, hey, this isn't the weak version that they replaced us with to make us more like them. This is the original Terminator model. Like, I can take a stabbing. I kind of like that detail, and like I said, the visual effect of her with just the head and walking around in the skeleton.
That was pretty cool.
It was cool, and she's putting on the hand like a glove. Like, that was neat. We've seen similar things in this show before, though, so I was kind of hoping, because we get like a glimpse of a mech like with tear gas, and I'm like, get the mech, go on, when's the mech's going to get into the big fight scene? And it never happened.
No.
God damn it. I'm upset about it. So, unfortunately, this season's going to go down as overall a disappointment, and when it's the ending, and not even just the ending, like when the entire last 3 episodes, I would say, fall into that disappointment bracket.
It's too much to forgive, right?
Yeah. If anything, it's worse because all I see is potential that was floundered, and
yeah, if those first 5 episodes hadn't been as good, if they were like, oh, these are pretty good, and then it got to this, you'd be like, it went downhill, but the chasm's not as big.
Maybe this is obvious, but I would much rather have 3 bad episodes at the start, and then it gets better, and hey, this actually got really worth watching.
I would too. Ideally, if there's good, like, let's say, okay, there's 8 episodes, and there has to be 3 bad ones, I'd rather them sprinkle throughout.
Sure, yeah. You want to start off good, so maybe have episode 2 be bad, then like episode 5, and then like episode 7, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, because you can forgive certain episodes being bad. Like, 2's a really easy one to forgive being underwhelming, because you come off really strong from your first episode, you set up all this stuff, and there's an inherent slowdown in the next episode that you can kind of often write it off because of that. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should wrap up. But this is, it's a shame that we're not praising this final episode. It's a shame that we're not praising this season, because there was a lot of potential, and the writing was just a little bit too sloppy, and just didn't pay off in ways that I want good science fiction to. And it hurts as well that there are genuinely great science fiction shows in the last couple of years that are maybe didn't start off at the height that Westworld did, but are like consistently adding layers to what they're doing, and consistently, Expanse is one we brought up before. Travelers is done now, but when that was on, it was doing nothing but getting better. And they constantly add to the themes that they're exploring. And this alternatively feels like it took the themes and then simplified them, and then it just felt like a B action movie. It has good visual effects for TV, don't get me wrong.
It feels like just a hollow shell of its former self, though.
Yes, hollow. That's the word I'd use. It feels hollow. I felt hollow watching this, and that's a shame. Especially when that moment in episode 5, when Dolores gave everyone their predictions in episode 5, that moment felt genuinely great. That felt like a genuine great science fiction moment. I
still feel like we didn't capitalize on that enough. We had that 5 minutes of terror of everyone completely breaking down, and then we saw basically nothing else of the rest of society for the rest of the show.
Well, no, the riots in this episode were off from that, though,
I mean,
right?
sure, but there was like... those feel meaningless just to show us a riot now, whereas you need context for what's going on. Like, where are we building to with this? What's going on with society? Not just that snapshot of 5 minutes.
Yeah, they need to be just little interludes almost. They have at least the episode after that where we saw just that there was more and more riots in the streets. There was more and more issues. Maybe
there was that one. I will give credit to the one moment last episode where Serac just kills that dude next to Charlotte.
And they get away with it, yeah, because
who cares right now? But we just didn't see enough of the city being in chaos. I think there was just too much empty streets until, here's a riot.
Yeah. Oh well. That's the season 3 finale of Westworld. Obviously, we don't have as much TV going on right now. We are still doing Star Trek Next Generation every week. If you're into us doing old shows, we're doing 6 Feet Under for patrons, the $1 tier and up. There is stuff coming soon though. We do have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. returning if you're a fan of that show, and it's actually a really good show. If you tried the first season, didn't like it, it got quite good if you like good versions of those types of shows. So just, that's a weird way to recommend it, but just we're excited. And then we got other things to try. Snowpiercer's coming. I'm not expecting to like that, especially since they confirmed it's a prequel to the movie.
It is.
Yeah, this was hilarious. They put out on Twitter, TNT put out the official timeline of the Snowpiercer universe, and it's literally a bar with just the movie there and the TV show before it. And I'm like, this didn't need a timeline. It's set before it.
I hadn't seen this. It's called...
You need a timeline with 2 things on it. All right.
You never know. It could be all right.
Anyway, that's us. So thank you for watching and listening. You can support us, of course, at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to see all the content we produce. If you want to support it and keep it all coming, do check out our movie podcast. Screams After Minutes, a horror podcast. The Ace Atomic Cinema Experiment is our sci-fi movie podcast. There's a lot of stuff you may want to look at. So go have a look at all that stuff. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?